Hey everyone, Al Fragnoli, Zach Sooty, Legal Leaders. We're joined today by John Mattone. John is the world's #1 ranked executive business leadership coach, and we're excited to have John join us. He's also the co-founder of Intelligent Leadership Executive Coaching, ILEC. So we're going to talk a lot about leadership tonight. John, thanks so much for coming on with us.
Al, it's a great honor. Zach, great to be here. Thank you all very, very much for the wonderful opportunity.
Well, we're excited to talk to you a little bit tonight. We've got a couple questions lined up for you. John, the first one we're going to ask you is, you spent several decades as an executive leadership coach. When did you know that this was something you wanted to do? And did you believe that this was your calling? And if so, why?
Well, Al, it's kind of an interesting, I've been on a really, honestly, a pretty interesting journey. I'm 65 in September, and it wasn't until 55 years old, it was 10 years ago, when literally I would describe it as a calling hit me. I was running around a lake doing an exercise program, and I'll just never forget, I stopped in my tracks and I was overcome just with a lot of energy and the message that went just like this. Hey, John, you got to go back and do what you were put on the earth to do. And I had my own business. I had launched my first business at age 30. My wife and I had been married 42 years. We raised 4 kids. We had 2 kids at home at the time. And I took a risk, I launched my first business, and I kind of I limped through it for 10 years. It was very, very tough, but I did survive, and I was able to pay the mortgage, so that's a good thing. But in the end, it was very, very tough. And I went back at age 40 and spent 15 years in the corporate world. And I got to tell you, Al and Zach, was the best thing I ever did. You got to get hit. You got to go through those experiences that are inevitable in the business world. And by going through those ups and downs, and also growing my career and building, I think, some toughness and resilience, I learned, quite a bit that has yielded very, very much in my executive coaching career. So make a long story short, I went to my wife when I got the calling. I said, Gail, I got to go back and do what I was put on the earth to do. And she gave me my blessing. And she said, just don't mess up. That's the only, that's the only thing. So listen, I never had a vision, I always felt like I had an entrepreneur in me, going back to undergraduate school and graduate school. It was kind of weird though, because my dad was in the Air Force for 35 years. My father-in-law was at Raytheon for like 35 years. So that was really what I was conditioned with. I was conditioned with, hey, stay with it, but I always felt like there was something different about me. I can't really describe it, that a little bit of a rebel in me. And, it just took me a few years to realize that I really was an entrepreneur at heart. And I sort of experimented from age 30 to 40. I wrote a couple books during that time frame. And then finally it was solidified at 55. Listen, I knew when I made that decision at 55 that was my life's calling, because I felt energized. It was a feeling. It was not a mental decision. I work with many executives all over the world, and you got to attend to your gut and your instincts. And I really did. And it's resulted, I think, because I'm living my purpose, which is to help people. And I think the other thing that I learned was, probably, it's not that difficult for me to admit it, Zach and Al, but really my first 55 years, I wouldn't say was incredibly selfish, but I was really on the selfish side of the scale. It was about me, and I was trying to, hey, how am I going to make money, and, and so on and so forth. And listen, when I realized that really was the wrong focus. My focus authentically has got to be, when I wake up every single day, I've authentically got to be moved to touch the hearts, minds, and souls of others. And when I made that decision, guys, I'm going to tell you, it all not only came together, but it all took off. Not only in terms of my career and my brand and my business as an executive coach, but listen, also my family. You know, I think I became a better husband. I became a better father and a better grandfather. You know, that help?
Absolutely. Thanks, John. I appreciate that. And I think, you know, there's a lot of things that you just shared with us that are very important that I think a lot of people can take away, but probably the most important, I think I heard you say, behind every great man is a great woman. And she said, don't screw up.
She did.
So,
you know, hey, Zach, I go to bed every night. Listen, that message is always in my head, you know. You know, we've got to, you know, I love that because, you know, I think the work that I do as an executive coach, accountabilities have got to be built in. Hey, whether you're an executive coach, a sports coach, a life coach, you're a teacher, accountabilities have got to be built in. And listen, you know, I'm privileged to have, you know, my family hold me accountable to do bigger and better things. You know, and even though I'm 65, it's funny, you know, a lot of people come up to me and they say, when are you retiring? And I'm very cordial. I'll say, listen, I understand that, you know, because really, honestly, a lot of people in their late 60s, you know, mid 60s, they start thinking about retiring. I actually feel like I just started out, you know, honestly. So I just tell them, listen, I feel like I'm in good shape, you know, and God willing, I can continue to help people. It'll be a privilege to keep doing what I'm doing for as long as I can go, you know?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, John, you've worked with countless companies and leaders across the country and throughout the world. One of the most recognizable names that you've coached is the late Steve Jobs. Tell us a little bit about how you became Steve Jobs' coach and what that coaching journey was like for the two of you.
Kind of an irony, Zach. You know, I had written a book back in 1997 that was just an incredible failure. Just nobody bought the book. And it was a great title, too. The title was called Success Yourself. Beautiful title. The problem is nobody cared about it, you know, and make a long story short, it was so bad. My wife and I collectively made the decision, I guess this thing's not going to work. You know, it's time to go back into the corporate world, and that was it, you know. So the you know, it's a kind of a funny story. The publisher sent all the books back, you know, because they didn't want any part of it. So they sent like 6,000 books to my house, and we threw them all out. I kept one book, I put it in my bookshelf, and I always felt like there was some pretty good stuff in there. You know, I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to use it, but I felt like there was some good stuff in there. And back in 2007, 2008, I started to do some executive coaching. You know what I did? I pulled the book out of the shelf and I started to utilize the material in the book. I had executives saying to me, wow, this is pretty amazing stuff. And so, you know, I was doing my thing. I was part of another company though, Zach, at that point. I wasn't doing my own thing. I was actually VP of assessments for a consulting firm. I had a really good job. And I was really honestly filling in for some consulting assignments on behalf of the CEO. And CEO was getting really good feedback. And, you know, I'm utilizing the content of my book and I'm sitting there saying, boy, you know, I got some stuff here. You know, maybe I got a career here. You know, I wasn't sure. So what happened was it was in 2010, about 15 months before Steve Jobs passed from pancreatic cancer. I had a call literally at my house, not this house that I'm in right now, but our house back then. And it was on the answering machine. We had answering machines back then, you know, and it was a call from Apple corporate in Cupertino that Steve Jobs had read my book and really liked it. And he was hoping that he would have the opportunity to meet me. Well, guess what? That led to my first meeting with him in Cupertino. And, you know, people, you know, I've shared this story a million times that, you know, what struck me about this guy was his courage, you know, dying from pancreatic cancer, but he still went to work every day, guys. He was still at work, you know, and he worked long hours. And anybody who knows anything about pancreatic cancer, period, is tough. Pancreatic cancer ravages the body. And here's a guy who's dying, looking to get better, okay? And so I did not do the coaching that I'm currently hired for now with some top CEOs in the world, very humbly said. I had the opportunity to really work with him over 5 sessions, and it was remarkable, you know, what I was able to really honestly learn from him. He gave me a lot more than I gave him, for sure. I would say this, that, you know, over the years, some people have said, hey, Mattone, you got lucky, you know, and I got to tell you, I don't believe that at all. I really believe in energy. I believe in predestiny. And I believe, you know, basically the stars were aligned and there was a higher purpose here, you know. So I did have the opportunity to meet him. The very interesting thing, the very core of the coaching that I teach and that I bring to executives and government leaders and actually some athletes that I've had the pleasure of working with, some of it really came from, you know, the philosophy of Steve Jobs. You know, think differently, think big, for example. You know, don't get stuck in your comfort zone. You got to be very agile. I mean, those were concepts that he was all about, that he brought into the culture at Apple. So that was the story with him. It was a remarkable experience, and really, honestly, the last 10 years, I've had the privilege of working with some other amazing people. Actually, anybody I have the chance to meet and work with, honestly, I learned something from, you know, and I try to bring that to our coaches, you know, that I work with. That, listen, it's a partnership, and it's the mutuality that creates the energy and the ignition to growth. It's not about you, the coach, imparting necessarily. You know what I'm saying? Is a smart individual you're dealing with. You got some smarts too, and it's the energy that you create that can move mountains. You know, so I hope that helps.
John, that was fantastic. Thank you for sharing that story. I love that story of how you were able to connect with Steve Jobs and what a leader he was. And you talk about somebody in his last year of his life, and he still wants to really, really focus on how he can get better, how he can grow, and what legacy he's going to leave behind to the world. So I love that story that you shared with us right there. John, jumping into our next question, what are some traits or qualities that you believe make up some of the best leaders out there in the world?
Unbelievable character. It's a question. Listen, you know, and we all know there's so much out there on leadership, right? And there's a lot of great perspective on leadership. And Al, you know this, obviously, that, you know, whatever is seen in the outer core, whether you're a leader, executing in your family, whether you're executing at work, whether you're executing on the ball field or the basketball court, whatever. None of those behaviors that you see, even in an athlete, none of those behaviors just happen. To me, greatness is ignited from very deep within the soul, you know, and the soul is very, very complex and multifaceted. And to me, Al, I believe the answer comes down to having a really strong, you know, I call it inner core, you know, and it's complicated, but it includes things like balanced self-image, you know, and we've all seen where the ego is the ingredient to failure in many respects across the world. As soon as your ego gets out of balance, you're in trouble, you know. You might be able to yield some good results for a little bit, but in the end, your legacy is going to be impacted negatively because people don't respond to an overactive ego, right? So I believe a balanced ego. You know, if you look at great athletes, there's a quiet confidence about them. You know, before they step into the batter's box, they're calm. You got to be calm. You know, there's always a calmness that I think precedes greatness in behavior. I think having a great character, you know, which includes being very courageous. You know, it takes courage to step into the batter's box, you know, and it takes courage to give feedback. It takes courage to be a leader who is willing to accept feedback, you know, from their team. to take feedback from their family. I think courage, I think working hard, those are character elements, but I also think having a really strong mindset, positive thinker, igniting positive emotions, igniting positive behaviors, it's an algorithm, and if you can polish that algorithm, you're going to increase the probability of executing greatness as a leader in the outer court. So I hope that helps. I really believe that, the answer to all of us becoming the best that we can be is having the courage to look inside, and if you don't have the guts to look inside, basically you're done. Now that sounds really, really concrete, but I've been around enough to see that, if you don't, and here's the thing, guys, if you look inside, a lot of people who have big egos, they look at that as weak. But in reality, right, it's courageous to look inside and do something about what you see on the inside. That's where coaches come in, guys. A coach can help somebody look inside and kind of see what's working, what's not working, and then help them translate what they see into driving greatness in the outer court, So that's what I believe I just don't think we have enough great leaders, because we don't have enough leaders having the courage to look inside and do something about what it is that they're saying. We have a great opportunity. If we work together, we got to work together. There's no one human being who can say, wave the magic wand and say, hey, we're going to improve leadership. Each and every one of us, we have a responsibility to raise the bar in leadership in the world, and our kids, you think about our kids and the future generations. We must, it's non-negotiable, guys, it's non-negotiable. So that's sort of what gets me out of bed in the morning,
John, that's inspiring. Thank you for sharing. I think, again, a lot of great stuff for our listeners to kind of take in. And I think that what I hear you say is a lot of self-reflection as a leader. When I lead individuals, or I'm put in a position for someone else to succeed, and maybe they're not succeeding in the way I thought they would, I reflect on myself to say, am I giving them the tools? Am I doing a good enough job to help them succeed? And I think that's very important. And I agree with you that sometimes, individuals don't look within. And I love that you mentioned that. Moving on to our next question, do you believe that people should have a mentor in their life? And if so, what's the importance of having a business mentor? And do you currently have one, or did you ever have someone that, helped you along the way?
Yeah, now listen, it's a great question. I think we have to surround ourselves with multiple mentors. I was very, very fortunate, Zach, when I got my first job out of graduate school. I'm never going to forget this guy. His name is Lou Larson, no longer with us. Lou was, I think, in his mid-60s, and he took a shot on John Mattone at 24, 25 years old, And he said, this was back at Stone & Webster Engineering Corporation many, many years ago. And he said, I think you can do this job. And I said, well, I'm looking for a job. I was just, Gail and I got married at 21. I need money. We just got out of grad. I'm looking for a job. And he said, I think there's a certain aura about you. How do you feel about running training programs for supervisors at Stone & Webster? And I said, I've never talked in front of anybody before. I did a little bit in graduate school. And he said, I think you can do it. In fact, I know you can do it. That was my first experience around the mentor. This guy believed in me more than I believed in myself, and I didn't want to disappoint him. And so I remember the first training program I delivered at Stone & Webster. I was so prepared and I was so nervous. That combination made me I was flying. I was flying around the room, and I got great feedback, and that was it. If it wasn't for Lou Larson, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. So long-winded answer, life is too difficult. The business world's too difficult to navigate by yourself, and we really should have a lot of people. We all want to think about our board of directors. You may not have a formal board of directors, but I think we need to surround ourselves with people who can complement us. So even today, even though John Mattone Global, we've got 4 companies, we don't really have a formal board, but I can tell you that I'm surrounded by a lot of really close people, not always from, the world that maybe a lot of people think of, A lot of people might think, hey, I'm just surrounded by, Marshall Goldsmith, for example, who is a mentor of mine, by the way, a legend within the world of executive coaching. I'm surrounded by a lot of people who have good perspective that I can run decisions by. Hey, what do you think about this? We're thinking about this. What are your thoughts about this? Hey, got a challenge coming up. I need your perspective on that. It's too difficult to do it alone. And don't look at having that board as weakness. You can only get stronger. It's just, they're going to raise you up, literally, So I'm a big proponent of mentoring. And actually, I build it into our executive coach. Al, you know this, right? Critical that we build this into our executive coaching, because you may not have the answers, So connecting that person with other individuals in your network, you can yield tremendous value for your client.
John, I love what you shared there about mentorship. It's so critically important for everybody to have mentors, no matter what industry you're in, right? I often think about growing up as a child and my dad being born in Italy, and he came to this country with not a penny to his name. And he always told me, surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, that are more intelligent than you, and people that are going to help get you to where you want to be so you can constantly learn and grow. And I've been fortunate myself. I've really taken that message to heart over the years. The last industry that I just left, blessed and fortunate to work around a gentleman who was my mentor, Lance Matthews, who got me into management and got me into leadership and helped me become the best leader that I possibly could. And he believed in me. And I couldn't agree with you more that having a mentor in your life is critically important to you becoming the best leader, that you aspire to be. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, thank you guys. Al, I appreciate that. Zach, listen, a lot of people have questions about how do I get a mentor? Just open your mouth. Just go open your mouth and ask. Most people, if you respect somebody and you trust somebody, and that person's got some wisdom that you admire, just go up to them and say, I admire you and I respect you. Would it be okay if we could set up a meeting? I'd like to, bring you for a cup of coffee, and I just would like to talk to you and pick your brain. You don't need to set up this sophisticated, 9-month mentorship thing, right? You just go one step at a time. Just have a conversation, right? And if there's energy, that individual, first of all, most people were very honored, that you ask them. And the second thing is, I actually haven't heard in my career that when a question's asked of somebody, hey, will you be my mentor, that person actually has turned them down. I've never heard that before. So just go ask somebody, and you'll be amazed how energized you're going to be from the wisdom that you're going to get just by having an incredible conversation, and then just take it from there.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, John. I mean, so many people want to help, other people out. And you nailed it right there is, we got to be vulnerable, right? We got to open up and ask that question. I enjoy what you share, what you have to offer. Can you be my mentor? Will you be my mentor? And most people will say 100%, yes, I want to help. What do you need?
Privilege. It's a privilege.
Absolutely.
Privileged. And that's what we need to raise the bar, because, it's interesting, we could walk out in the street right now and just encounter somebody that we don't know, and we could go up to that person and say, hey, this is who I am. What's your name? And share with that person, hey, you got a second? I'd like to ask you a question. I got a challenge, would like to get your perspective. And they might look at you kind of weird, right? They'll say, who is this person? And then you share, and then all of a sudden they share something with you that you had never considered before. And, it's very interesting. Maybe out of 10 people that you ask, maybe 9 of them, they don't give you anything much, but maybe the 10th person gives you gold, So it's been interesting that, to your point, Al, the more vulnerable we are and the more open we are to perspective, the more gold we're going to find.
Absolutely.
You just got to do it, you know? And I got to tell you, because Al, you already know this. I get a lot of questions. How have you done what you've done in 10 years? You know, they kind of look at the brand and the books and, you know what I'm saying? And Al already knows this. I haven't done this alone. You know,
right.
I'm just surrounded by people who are unbelievably support, and it starts with my wife, you know? So you just got to open up. That's the key, you know? And if you think that you're going to do it alone, well, guess what? You might be successful, but you're not going to be as successful if you open up.
Right, absolutely. John, you keep mentioning your wife. She sounds like a very strong support system. I know you mentioned you're 64 going on 65. You don't look a day older than 63. So keep doing what you're doing, John. John,
that is a compliment. I'm going to take that as a compliment.
It's a 100% compliment. Yes, it is. John, let's shift over to intelligent leadership executive coaching for a minute here. So take a couple minutes, talk to us a little bit about ILEC, what it is you guys do, and what ILEC is all about.
Intelligent leadership executive coaching, Al, is really a couple of things. Really, honestly, there's a philosophy of leadership, and I've talked a little bit about it here in the last 20, 25 minutes, is that the inner core drives the outer core. And that's a very core element of driving greatness in human beings, is getting people to look inside and leverage the massive gifts and strengths, very often that are hidden. You know, isn't that interesting? That's a big aha. Even some of the top CEOs in the world that I've ever worked with, you know, when I work with them, they end up discovering, not because of me, it's again a partnership, back to what I said before, but you sort of open it up, you know, and they can kind of look inside, and with my support, you know, and they discover, boy, I didn't realize I had all these gifts and strengths that I need to pull out, you know. So intelligent leadership executive coaching is a philosophy, and it's a process, Al, you know, and you know, because a lot of people look at coaching as, hey, you know, what is that, counseling? Well, it's not. You know, executive coaching is a process of really, you know, it begins with, Zach, what you said earlier, self-discovery, and how do you get somebody to really look inside and really understand their gifts and also where they're weak, and also it involves, you know, just like a business or a baseball team, you know, taking your gifts and collectively your strengths and your weaknesses and creating a strategy for how you're going to win baseball games, you know. And it's the same thing with an executive. You know, you want to create a strategy or a plan that leverages their gifts and addresses their development needs. And then the whole notion of accountability. And I would say, Al, I think one of the big things of intelligent leadership executive coaching is that we're very measurement oriented. We're very metric oriented. And I think that differentiates the work that we do as compared to other executive coaches. And again, not that other executives are not metric oriented, but we're really scientific from the standpoint of mitigating risk, working with somebody to help them, you know, again, get calibrated on all the stuff that's operating on their inside and outside. We build a plan, and then we hold them accountable, and then ultimately return on investment. You know, literally, it was about 2 years ago, I was approached by actually many executives saying, John, you got a franchise here. You know, you've got the intellectual property, you have a process that's replicatable. You really should create a franchise. And now you know the story. You know, I didn't know how to do it, so I partnered with a gentleman, and that gentleman's my partner. And what they do, his name's Terry Powell, and what Terry Powell and his organization does is they created the franchise system combined with our intellectual property. And intelligent leadership executive coaching is growing. You know, we launched it about a year ago. And now we've got, we were up to 14 franchisees who are now, you know, having the opportunity to bring the philosophy, process, and tools to the world so that they can help leaders become the best that they can be.
Thank you, John, for kind of telling everybody what ILEC is and how it came about. One thing that I think a lot of our viewers love to walk away with, and all of your experiences, what is one piece of advice that you could provide to someone who wants to be a leader, or who is a leader, that you think would be something they can walk away from today? What's a piece of advice you'd give them?
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things. I would say this, the pandemic has been very difficult, and we're still dealing with it, and it is no question one of the more disruptive events that, personally I've been through. I think the learning, Zach, for all of us is that, let's call that the pandemic. There's going to be other pandemics that will come humans' way. And hopefully we don't experience them, but, it's a disruptive event. So one thing that we know from our time on Earth is that it is inevitable that we're going to be facing in our lifetimes many, many disruptive situations. And what I've been able to learn, and I try to bring this to our clients, is that especially what I'm seeing with this pandemic, you want to be a great leader. There's no shortage of intellect in the world. Okay, there are a lot of smart people running around with big time IQs. In many respects, to me, it kind of levels the playing field. The question for me is, what are you going to do, to differentiate yourself? Okay, you got a 150 IQ, so is that person right there, and that person right there sitting right next to you got a 160, So the IQ is not the differentiator in the world. You know what the differentiator is? It's the heart. And I think for the leaders listening in here tonight and future leaders, I truly believe that the calling for all of us is with respect to, yes, continue to develop your brain, okay? But you need to develop your heart even more, because people need courtesy, they need compassion, they need care, they need concern, they need collaboration. And that's not only true in the business world, it's true in a baseball diamond, true in our families. And so I encourage the leaders who are listening in is, ask yourself the question about what you can do, because you've got the capability to do it, is to go deep into your heart and have the courage to pull it out and show it to people authentically. And guess what? See the reaction that you're going to get from the people around you, because ultimately, when you think about it, the answer to happiness, how many people run around and look for happiness? They think it's an external variable. It's not an external variable. In respect, happiness is only created by creating happiness in others. So the answer, I believe, for being a great leader is do what you can do authentically to create happiness in others. And guess what? You'll be happy. That's what I would say.
I love that, John. That's fantastic. I love that you mentioned being authentic and really opening up your heart, right? What's inside of you. That's what the strongest leaders, I think, possess, is opening up their heart. And there's, unfortunately, I think, a lot of leaders that are afraid to do that for whatever reason. But I couldn't agree with you more. When you open up your heart to others and they see your true character, they're going to bend over backwards for you and do anything that you ask them to do. So that's fantastic information. John, we're going to wrap it up, kind of tying in that to that last question. There's a lot of people that are interested in coaching, that want to be a leadership coach and help others become the best versions of themselves. Yep. What's maybe one or two things that you can offer, suggest, that you believe make up the strongest business coaches?
I think, first of all, when you think about leadership coaching, guys, the industry is exploding with opportunity. I can envision, think about this. in the next 5, maybe 10 years, probably closer to 10 years, I envision every leader in every role in the United States having a coach. And, you know, it may not be, you know, it may not be a really high paid, you know, executive coach, but it's somebody that you can talk to. You know, guys, back to our concept on mentorship. I really believe, just like an athlete, right? Athletes are surrounded by multiple coaches. I believe the business world is moving towards, in the next 10 years, every leader at every level having a coach. So let's think about, you know, what are the ingredients of a great coach? Real quick on this, Al, I believe it's, are you a servant leader? You know, that's it. To me, you know, because I work with a lot of coaches, and there's a lot of great coaches out there, a lot of great coaches. To me, what separates the greatest coaches in the world is that there's a servant leadership mindset and execution that comes through, you know, and it's related, guys, to a lot of what we've talked about here on the show, you know. Yeah, you got to have smarts and all of that stuff. But to me, you know, it is about partnership. It's really about partnership. It's about heart. It's about going into every assignment, you know, having a mindset of privilege that, my goodness, you know, what a great privilege to be able to work with this individual and, yeah, share what I know, but also learn from them. That's, to me, that's the key.
John, you mentioned a lot of great stuff. That wraps up our conversation for tonight. But you touched on a lot of interesting things. You mentioned a couple keywords that stood out in my mind a lot tonight: privilege and honor. Right? As a coach, it is an absolute privilege and honor to work with leaders throughout the country, throughout the world, to make them the best version of themselves. You mentioned servant leadership right now. Zach and I talk to tons of leaders each and every single week, and the best leaders, in my opinion, touch on servant leadership. And it's about how we can lead other people, how we can inspire other people. You just touched on the fact that you believe 10 years from now, a majority of companies are going to have leadership coaches. And I think that's such an interesting point, because I agree with you 100% there. I read something a couple of weeks ago that Urban Meyer, you know, obviously the legendary coach, he's with the Jacksonville Jaguars now. He's had success everywhere he's been. When he was with the Buckeyes and the Florida Gators, he will ask coaches, assistant coaches, when he's considering bringing them in as a part of their staff, if they are open to having a leadership coach work with them. And when they say no, he cuts them off right away, because he believes that every person needs a coach so that they can grow. And being a guy from Michigan, I don't really like Urban Meyer, but I respect the fact that he says that. And I love the fact that you mentioned that, John. So anyways, Zach and I are honored to have you on with us tonight. You've shared a lot of great information. We know that it's going to help touch a lot of minds and souls of everybody that's listening. So we cannot thank you enough for taking some time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight. Thank you so much, John.
It was a joy, gentlemen. Thank you very much, Al. Zach, thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you, John.
All right. You have a great night. Thank you.